The Miz.
Okay, so Miz. So yeah, I know you said you wanted one word answers, but I'm telling stories on everybody. Here comes another one. So I get a call from Scott Freeman. Scott was the president at Bunim Murray. Bunim Murray at the time was one of the top reality show companies in the industry. And amongst other shows, they were producing this thing called The Real World, big hit on MTV. And I knew Scott. We were working on some projects together. He was like, Rick, he goes, we got New York Real World happening now. We've got one of the cast members in the house, like terrorizing everybody all season long with like this wrestling character he's created for himself called The Miz. I'm like, okay, it's pretty random. He's like, yeah, do you have any pro wrestlers in New York that for the season finale, we can get to come by the house as a surprise and kind of scare the shit out of The Miz? So I don't remember ECW Roadkill, but that's who I came up with out of everybody is Roadkill. So Roadkill goes to the house, scares the Miz. They had a great bit. Everybody was happy. A couple of months later, Scott Freeman calls me again. He goes, "Hey, remember that Miz guy?" I'm like, "Yeah, vaguely." He's like, "Well, he's relocated to LA. He wants nothing more in life than to be a pro wrestler. Can I send him by your school?" I'm like, "Sure." Another student. Why not? Right? Miz comes by, nice enough guy. Here we go again. Paul London, LA Knight, Young Bucks. That's a whole other story that came through that I didn't see anything in. Oops. So I'm like, great, let's enroll you. Now, the Miz enrolls, and we would do these little practice shows. I mentioned earlier our UPW shows were like these production shows. We started a thing called the Light Show, Lite, light, like Miller Light. So the idea was a show that was like the light beer version of our production shows. The announcer, like the first gym show, no microphone. People would walk in from the back. Small shows, $3 to get in. The heel in the face wouldn't know who was a heel in the face until they got there. They're like trial by fire matches. They were for practice and development. So the Miz would do these shows, and he kind of had a arrogant LA Hollywoodish attitude, and we didn't have that at UPW. It just didn't fit the rest of the mix. I learned later he was portraying what he thought the character should be, but it was kind of carrying across, I thought, to him, the person. So we did something we had never done before, and that was to teach somebody a lesson. I was always against that, making people pay their dues physically, because pro wrestling is hard enough as it is without going out of the way to make it harder on somebody. But Sylvester Terkay beat The Miz up pretty good that night. And that was a setup. And I remember The Miz came back after the match, and a few of us were back there. He's like, guys, he goes, I get it. I'm sorry, I get it. And that whole Miz persona like melted away immediately. Model student, super good dude. Got to know him a little bit. Don't know Miz well, but what I got to know, I always liked him a lot as a person, and I admire him now as much, if not more, than just about anybody else. Because you hear the stories over and over. Well, Miz came in and Benoit gave him a hard time, and this guy gave him a hard time, and that guy, and no one thought he was going to make it. And dude, look at Miz now. All these years later, one of the top guys for all these years. So that's a guy who deserves it, in my opinion, as a human being, and as a professional. He's shown what you can do with what you're given.